All right, Professor Olivetti here again with another video on the Gospel according to Luke. Today we are looking at the childhood stories of Jesus. These are found in Luke chapter 2, verses 21 to 52. These are only in Luke. So scholars think they're likely compositional, right? That they are more a part of an attempt for Luke to share the meaning of who Jesus was to the apostles and the Gentile churches that he's writing for. And also, I say Gentile churches, Gentile members of the churches he's writing for. This was written in a time when there was more and more Gentiles joining the church. Please remember, always have to come back to this. The first Christians, the early Christians that we saw in the first decade after the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ were largely Jewish. Right? I mean, the first ones were exclusively Jewish, the apostles and the other disciples. They were Jews who believed Jesus was the Messiah. There is an account in Acts where St. Peter and St. Paul start baptizing people who are not considered Jewish, people who don't follow the entire law of Moses. Like they didn't follow the dietary laws and they weren't circumcised. And they were instructed by the Holy Spirit to baptize these people. And so they do. At that point, Christianity kind of becomes its own religion. It's no longer just a sect of Judaism, a heretical sect as it was. And non-Jews entered in to the church en masse. These non-Jewish members of the church are Luke's intended audience, right? So like we say, in the like we already pointed out, he's going to spend a lot of time, especially in these compositional elements of his gospel, explaining the Jewish tradition to Gentiles, that is non-Jews, and helping them understand the major themes in his gospel. So that's kind of what's going on in this story, and you'll see how these stories are laid out. First story is a presentation of Jesus in the temple. So we have this expected continuity that we talked about, and it would be well liked by the Jewish audience and appreciated by the Gentile audience here. So what they have there is the Jewish practice of redeeming the firstborn son. If you want to get technical, they didn't actually have to bring them to the temple to do this, but the idea is that every firstborn male child, and they would do this for their livestock as well, was the Lord's, and so you would have to kind of pay tribute to release them from that and take them into your family, right? So you would redeem them. You would pay money for them to be freed from their service to the Lord in some ways. I know when you talk about this sounds like God is taking slaves or something, and it's very awkward. But it seems like the intent was that to remind the Israelites that the family line was not what made someone a person of God, right? It's kind of like a reminder there. This is not about being a member of our tribe, or this is not about being a genetic descendant of Abraham, right? No, being the people of God is about choosing to participate in the community of loving persons. And so this reminder that they had, hey, the firstborn son, that's not even your kid, right? That's God's kid. That's a sign, right, of the calling of all the Israelites, not just as a tribal people, but as the people of God, which transcends these tribal lines. And so when they do this, they meet these righteous folk, right? And they could be counted among the rich, right? Because remember, when this term rich, as used in Luke, it doesn't just mean the person has a lot of money. It's more like prestigious, right? So these two, although they might not have a lot of money, they don't really go into that. They are rich in that they're righteous folk, right? Simeon and Anna, right? This is another typically Lucan thing where there's a pair, right? He always has these parallel pairs in his gospel. And here's another thing we're going to see, we'll get into later, but Anna, she didn't have to be in there. But Luke will make sure that she has a significant role to play. Okay, so the Simeon story. When Jesus is brought to the temple, notice here this little Jesus here in the icon. In the icons, they don't draw the children in the adult proportion, just smaller. It's part of the mystical approach and the recognition of the divinity of Christ here. Now, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and this man was righteous and devout, right? So again, he's among the rich, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him. So here we see this Holy Spirit again, leading everything in Luke, and the second part of Luke, the book of Acts. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he should not see death before he had seen the Messiah of the Lord. And he came in the Spirit into the temple. So when he's saying he came in the Spirit, that means he's in some kind of prophetic trance, all right, where he's actually, in a way, possessed by the Holy Spirit. Not so dissimilar to what medians profess today in pop culture. This is something that more or less might have dropped out of popularity in some circles, but in other Christian circles, you still people in worship services that will get the Spirit, and they'll have this experience of kind of like the Holy Spirit possessing. I don't know if that's the best term, but that they are filled with the Holy Spirit, right? That the Holy Spirit kind of takes over there for a minute, and their normal everyday concept of self kind of drops away, right? So they feel like they are part of something much bigger, and it's God inside them who is guiding them at that moment. We see this in traditions like possession of the Spirit in some of our American Christian churches still today, and also speaking in tongues is another way that people sometimes experience this phenomenon, which they think is a contemporary they think it's what the author is talking about here in Luke when he's talking about people like Simeon being in the Spirit, right? Okay, so regardless, he's in the Spirit. He's not speaking for himself. It's God speaking through him here. And when the parents brought him in the child Jesus to perform the custom of the law, again, technically they didn't have to bring him to the temple, but it really fits well with the story here. And again, maybe Luke, as a Gentile, writing for Gentiles, wasn't really that familiar with the Jewish law in the first place. In regard to him, he took him into his arms and blessed him, saying, and again, here's the expected continuity. Now, master, that's God. Now, master, you may let your servant go in peace according to your word. So this is what I've been waiting for, and I can die happy now, right? My eyes have seen your salvation, right? There's that salvation already present, which you have prepared in sight of all peoples. So this is good Jewish stuff. This is something the Jewish members of the church would be saying, yes, great. Yes, wonderful. All Jews were waiting for the Messiah. Believing in a Messiah was one of the most Jewish things you can do. It did not separate you from Judaism. Unless, in this case, you were a first century Jew who believed Jesus was the Messiah. The other Jews would have kicked you out of the synagogue. Okay, now you would still be Jewish. You would just be a heretical Jew. Okay, so again, it's not like you were either Jewish or Christian. In the early church, the Jews were the Christians, right? All the Christians were Jews. And I said it's not till later that St. Peter and St. Paul start baptizing Gentiles and bring the issue to head. And at that time, we'll see it if you move on to Acts, that the Jerusalem church decides, yes, Gentiles can be part of our church too. Right? That's the point where Christianity kind of becomes its own religion. It's not the belief in Jesus as the Messiah that makes Christianity, that puts Christianity in a category outside of Judaism. No, it was the inclusion of Gentiles that kind of put it in its own thing. Because now they're saying people who can be part of our religion, right, part of our version of Judaism, don't need to follow the whole law of Moses. And that was kind of one of the major definitions and elemental elements of the definition of Judaism at the time. So at that point, Christianity kind of could be categorized as another faith. Until then, they were just heretical Jews, maybe mistaken Jews according to the mainline Jews, rejected Jews, right, who believed Jesus was Messiah. But believing someone's the Messiah is very Jewish. So anyway, very expected continuity there. That's a very Jewish thing to say. People would be all psyched about that if they agreed that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. Other Jews would be psyched about it if they thought it was identifying the right person as the Jewish Messiah, right? But here, of course, we go to a shocking, unexpected discontinuity. A light for the revelation of the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. Now, what is so messed up about this? Well, the Gentile inclusion, that is in the Old Testament. There is the idea that the Messiah would bring all people to God. So the Messiah, in the saving of the Jews and the redemption of Israel, would attract people from all over the world. And eventually, as we saw in the New Jerusalem, in the Theology 220 course, there's people from all over the world that are included, right? It's not just Jews. What's really kind of makes this a surprise is that the Gentiles are listed first, right? So for the Jewish expectations, it's kind of like Israel is saved, and then everybody else kind of like, comes on in and joins Israel, almost like in a conversion, right? Almost like, well, they'd all become Israelites then. But in this one, the Gentiles are first, right? And people didn't see that coming. That was a shocking discontinuity. All right. And I think I noted already, have seen, right? Simeon here is saying he has seen, like he's seen the salvation. And that's that theme, salvation already present. Just in the birth of the Messiah, right? He sees it fulfilled a little bit. Remember we said that the experience of seeing a little bit of God's promise revealed gives hope to the faithful that all God's promises will be fulfilled. And in that way, we can experience salvation that's already present, even if it's only partial, right? And that's what's going on with Simeon here, right? He sees the baby Messiah and he's like, that's it. Like, I've seen it. It's underway. I'm good. Now I can die in peace.